I want to tell you something that might shake you awake right now. Your mind has been sending you messages, hasn't it? Maybe you've been waking up at 3 in the morning with your heart racing and your thoughts spinning. Maybe you've been feeling this strange restlessness, like something inside you is trying to break through the surface. Perhaps you've noticed the same problems appearing over and over in your life, different faces but the same painful pattern. Or maybe you've had this growing sense that you're living someone else's life, following a script you never agreed to read. Listen to me carefully. These are not coincidences. These are not signs that something is wrong with you. Your subconscious mind, that magnificent power within you that never sleeps, that vast intelligence that keeps your heart beating and your lungs breathing, is desperately trying to get your attention. It's been whispering to you and now it's starting to shout. And if you ignore it, if you push it down one more time with distractions and busyness and pretending everything is fine, you'll miss the most important awakening of your entire life. I spent decades studying the human mind, watching thousands of people transform their lives, and I discovered something that changed everything. The subconscious mind will not be ignored forever. It will create discomfort. It will manufacture crisis. It will burn down the false structures of your life if that's what it takes to wake you up to your true power and purpose. Right now, in this very moment, your inner mind is speaking. The question is, are you finally ready to listen? Because what I'm about to share with you isn't just information. It's a key to a door you didn't even know existed, and once you walk through it, nothing will ever be the same. You see, most people live their entire lives in a kind of waking sleep. They think they're conscious, they think they're making choices, but they're really just running on old programming, ancient beliefs that were planted in their minds before they were even old enough to question them. And your subconscious, that faithful servant, that powerful force within you, it's trying to break you free from that prison. Think about it this way. Imagine you're driving down a highway, and you've been on this road for so long that you don't even notice you're driving anymore. Your hands move the wheel automatically, your foot knows when to press the gas, when to brake. You're thinking about dinner, or that conversation you had yesterday, or what you need to do tomorrow. You're not really present. You're not really here. And then suddenly, something happens. Maybe it's a deer jumping onto the road, or a car swerving into your lane, or just a strange noise from your engine. And in that instant you snap awake. Your senses sharpen. Time seems to slow down. You become hyper-aware of everything around you. That's consciousness breaking through the autopilot. Your nightmares work exactly the same way. They're your subconscious mind creating a crisis, a shock to your system, designed to wake you up from the trance of your daily life. They're saying, hey, pay attention, something here needs to change. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, but Joseph, why does it have to be so scary? Why can't my subconscious just send me a gentle reminder, a pleasant dream with a clear message? And here's the truth that might be hard to hear. It probably tried that already. It probably sent you subtle hints, quiet whispers, gentle nudges. But you ignored them. We all do. The subconscious mind doesn't have language the way your conscious mind does. It can't send you an email or leave you a voicemail. It speaks in symbols, in feelings, in images. And when the gentle symbols don't work, when the quiet feelings get pushed aside because you're too busy, too distracted, too caught up in the daily grind, then it has no choice but to turn up the volume. And this is where people get scared. They think their body has turned against them, that something has gone terribly wrong. But here's the truth that will change everything. Your body hasn't betrayed you. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. It's getting your attention the only way it knows how. Think about it like this. Imagine you have a small child tugging at your sleeve. At first, it's gentle, just a soft pull, a quiet voice saying, "Excuse me." But if you keep ignoring that child, keep scrolling on your phone, keep having that conversation, keep pretending you don't notice, what happens? The tugs get harder, the voice gets louder. Eventually that child might start crying, might throw something, might do whatever it takes to make you look down and finally pay attention. Your body is that child. And the illness, the pain, the diagnosis, that's not punishment. That's communication that's been escalated because the whispers were ignored for too long. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. But I didn't ignore anything. I take care of myself. I eat well. I exercise. I do everything right. And maybe you do. Maybe your physical habits are impeccable. But here's what most people miss. You can be feeding your body organic vegetables while simultaneously feeding your mind toxic thoughts. You can run 5 miles every morning while running away from unresolved grief. You can do yoga and stretching while remaining completely inflexible about the emotional truths you're unwilling to face. The body keeps the score. It always has. It stores every unexpressed emotion, every swallowed word, every moment you smiled when you wanted to scream. And it doesn't do this to torture you, it does this because it's trying to protect you, trying to help you survive. But survival and thriving are two very different states. And your subconscious mind, brilliant as it is, sometimes can't tell the difference between keeping you alive and keeping you stuck. This is why you can know exactly what you need to do. You can read all the books, watch all the videos, understand all the principles, and still find yourself frozen when it's time to act. You're not weak. You're not broken. You're just caught between two systems. Your conscious mind that wants to grow, and your subconscious mind that wants to keep you safe. And here's what makes this even more complicated. Your subconscious doesn't just store your own experiences. It absorbs the beliefs, fears, and limitations of everyone around you. When you were young, you didn't have filters. You couldn't analyze whether your parents' anxiety about money was rational or not. You couldn't question whether your teacher's comment about your abilities was accurate. You just absorbed it all like a sponge. So now, decades later, you might be carrying fears that aren't even yours. You might be living within boundaries that someone else drew for you when you were too young to realize you had the power to erase them. I've seen this pattern over and over again. Someone comes to me frustrated, saying, "I don't understand why I can't move forward. I want success. I'm working hard, but nothing changes." And when we dig deeper, we find a belief planted 30 years ago by a parent who said, "Money doesn't grow on trees," or "People like us don't get those kinds of opportunities." That single sentence, repeated enough times, becomes a command to the subconscious mind, and the subconscious loyal servant that it is, spends the next 3 decades making sure you prove that belief right. This is the invisible architecture of your life. These subconscious patterns are the blueprints your mind follows when it's building your reality. And until you become aware of them, until you shine light into those dark corners of your mind, they'll continue to run the show. But here's the turning point in this whole conversation. Awareness is the first step to freedom. The moment you recognize that these patterns exist, the moment you understand that your subconscious is not your enemy but simply an outdated program running in the background, that's when everything begins to shift. Think of it like this. Imagine you're driving a car, but the GPS is programmed with old destinations, places you used to live, jobs you no longer have, relationships that ended years ago. Every time you try to go somewhere new, the GPS keeps trying to redirect you back to those old addresses. That's exactly what your subconscious does when it's filled with outdated beliefs and unhealed wounds. You might consciously want a loving relationship, but if your subconscious is still running on the programming of, "I'm not worthy of love," or "People always leave me," then guess what? You'll unconsciously sabotage every healthy relationship that comes your way. You'll pick fights over nothing. You'll create drama where there doesn't need to be any. You'll push away the very people who genuinely care about you, not because you're a bad person, but because your subconscious is trying to prove itself right. It's trying to confirm the story it's been telling for years. And here's what makes this so insidious. Your subconscious will make you believe that these self-sabotaging behaviors are logical, justified, even protective. It'll whisper, "See? I told you they'd hurt you. Good thing you pushed them away first." It creates a false sense of safety by keeping you in familiar pain rather than allowing you to step into unfamiliar joy. The same thing happens with money. You might say you want financial abundance, you might work hard, hustle, grind yourself into exhaustion, but if deep down your subconscious believes that money is the root of all evil, or rich people are greedy, or I don't deserve more than just getting by, then you'll hit an invisible ceiling every single time. You'll make the money and then mysteriously lose it. You'll get the promotion and then somehow mess it up. You'll have the opportunity right in front of you and find a way to talk yourself out of taking it. Your subconscious isn't trying to punish you. It's trying to keep you consistent with your identity. And if your identity has been shaped by lack, by struggle, by unworthiness, then abundance feels like a threat to who you believe you are. That's why affirmations fail. That's why vision boards collect dust. That's why people can read every self-help book on the shelf and still end up exactly where they started. Because they're trying to paint a new picture over a foundation that hasn't changed. You can say, "I am wealthy," 1,000 times while standing in front of a mirror. But if deep down, in the hidden chambers of your subconscious, you still believe that money is dirty, that rich people are corrupt, that you don't deserve more than you have right now, those affirmations are just noise. They're words bouncing off a wall that was built years ago, reinforced by every experience, every disappointment, every time someone told you to be realistic. I need you to understand something that changed everything for me. Your subconscious doesn't care about what you want. It only cares about what you believe is true. Let me say that again because it's the key that unlocks everything. Your subconscious doesn't care about your desires, your dreams, your prayers, your wishes. It responds only to what you have accepted as true about yourself and your reality. This is why someone can desperately want success while simultaneously sabotaging every opportunity. This is why people can crave love but push away everyone who gets close. This is why you can want financial freedom but feel guilty every time you spend money on yourself. The want is conscious, the belief is subconscious, and the subconscious always wins. Always. Think about the people you know who seem to effortlessly attract what they want. The ones who land on their feet no matter what. The ones who seem to have luck follow them around like a faithful dog. You might think they're special, gifted, connected, privileged. But here's what they actually have: alignment. Their conscious desires and their subconscious beliefs are pointing in the same direction. They want abundance, and somewhere deep inside they believe they're worthy of it. They desire success, and their internal identity agrees that success is who they are. This is the secret that changes everything. And when you understand this, when you truly grasp this principle, you stop fighting yourself. You stop using willpower to drag yourself toward goals that your inner self doesn't believe in. You stop exhausting yourself with positive affirmations that bounce off the walls of your deeply held negative beliefs. Instead, you begin the real work, the inner work, the work of reconciling these two minds. Because here's what most people don't realize: your subconscious mind is not your enemy. It's not sabotaging you out of spite. It's actually trying to protect you. It's trying to keep you consistent with the identity you've built over years, maybe decades. If you've spent your whole life believing you're not good with money, your subconscious sees that as part of your identity. It's who you are. So when you suddenly start affirming wealth and taking actions toward financial abundance, your subconscious perceives this as a threat to your identity. It's like you're trying to become someone else entirely. And the subconscious resists change. It loves familiarity. It loves the known, even when the known is uncomfortable. This is why people self-sabotage right before success. This is why you see someone about to close a major deal and suddenly they get sick, or they say the wrong thing, or they forget an important meeting. Their conscious mind wants the success, but their subconscious mind says, "Wait, this isn't who we are. We're not that successful person, we're the person who struggles. We're the person who almost makes it but not quite." And the subconscious always wins that battle. So what's the solution? How do you stop this internal war? You don't force the subconscious to accept new beliefs. You don't bully it into submission. You persuade it. You gently introduce new ideas. You show it evidence that contradicts the old identity. You feed it new images, new feelings, new experiences until gradually, quietly, it begins to shift. You change your identity from the inside out. And this is where the real power of the subconscious mind reveals itself. Because once your subconscious accepts a new belief, once it adopts a new identity, it will move heaven and earth to make that identity real in your outer world. This is why affirmations work, not because they're magical words, but because they are tools of identity shift. When you say, "I am confident," you're not lying to yourself. You're not pretending. You're planting a seed in the most fertile soil in existence, your subconscious mind. And if you water that seed with feeling, with repetition, with emotional conviction, it will grow. It must grow. Because the subconscious doesn't argue, it doesn't debate. It accepts what you give it with the feeling of truth. But here's where most people stumble. They say the words, but they don't feel the truth of them. They affirm abundance while feeling lack. They declare confidence while trembling with doubt. And the subconscious, ever faithful, responds not to the words but to the feeling behind them. So if you want real change, you must marry your words to your emotions. You must speak with conviction, as if what you're declaring is already true, because in the realm of consciousness, it already is. Think of a child learning to walk. That child doesn't question whether it's possible. It doesn't analyze the mechanics of balance and motion. It simply tries, falls, tries again. And eventually, the subconscious mind takes over. Walking becomes automatic, effortless, natural. The same process applies to confidence, to success, to wealth, to love. You practice the new identity until it becomes natural, until it becomes you. And here's the beautiful part: you don't need anyone's permission to change your identity. You don't need a degree, a title, or external validation. You can decide right now, in this moment, to be someone different. The past doesn't bind you unless you let it. Your history is not your destiny. You are not the sum of your mistakes, your failures, or your limitations. You are the consciousness that observes all of that, and consciousness is infinite in its capacity to choose again. You can choose again right now, not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect, not when you feel more confident or more prepared. Right now, in this moment, you have the power to plant an entirely new seed in the garden of your subconscious mind. Here's what most people don't realize. Your subconscious doesn't argue with you. It doesn't judge your worthiness. It doesn't question whether you deserve what you're claiming. It simply accepts what you persistently impress upon it as true. This is both the danger and the opportunity. The danger is that if you keep feeding it the same old stories, I'm not good enough, I always fail, nothing ever works out for me, it will faithfully reproduce those conditions in your life. The opportunity is that when you deliberately choose new thoughts, new beliefs, new mental images, your subconscious will work just as faithfully to bring those into your experience. Think about this. Every single thing you see in your life right now was once just a thought. Your job, your relationships, your health, your financial situation, all of it began as mental activity before it became physical reality. If you don't like what you're seeing, you have to go back to the source. You have to change the mental equivalent. This is where most people get stuck. They want to change their circumstances without changing their consciousness. They want a different harvest without planting different seeds. It doesn't work that way. You cannot continue thinking poverty and expect prosperity. You cannot continue dwelling on illness and expect health. You cannot continue rehearsing failure and expect success. The law is precise. What you impress on your subconscious mind, you will express in your outer world. This isn't punishment. This isn't some cosmic test. It's simply how the creative process works. Your subconscious is the soil. Your thoughts are the seeds. What you plant, you will harvest. And here's the truth that most people miss: you're already planting seeds. Every single day, every single moment. The question isn't whether you're planting. The question is, what are you planting? When you say, I never have enough money, you're planting a seed of lack. When you think, I'm not good enough, you're planting a seed of unworthiness. When you repeat, nothing ever works out for me, you're planting a seed of failure. And your subconscious, it doesn't judge. It doesn't argue. It doesn't say, are you sure you want to plant that? It simply takes what you give it and says, your wish is my command. This is why awareness is everything. You cannot change what you don't see. You cannot uproot what you haven't recognized. The first step to transformation is catching yourself in the act of negative planting. Listen to your inner dialogue today. Really listen. What are you saying to yourself when you're stuck in traffic? What thoughts run through your mind when you look in the mirror? What story are you telling yourself about your finances, your relationships, your potential? These aren't just thoughts. These are instructions. These are blueprints. These are seeds that will grow into your tomorrow. Now I know what some of you are thinking. But Joseph, I've had negative thoughts for years, decades even. Isn't it too late? Haven't those seeds already taken root? And here's where I want to offer you tremendous hope. Yes, negative seeds grow, but so do positive ones. And positive seeds, when planted with conviction and feeling, grow faster and stronger than any weed of doubt. Your subconscious mind is always working in the present moment. It doesn't care what you planted yesterday, it cares what you're planting now, right now, this very second. This means you can begin again. Right here, right now, this breath, this moment. You can choose a new seed. You can speak a new truth. You can impress a new belief upon that fertile soil of your deeper mind. And the moment you do, the universe, not by magic, not by miracle, but by law, must conform to that new impression. Because that is the nature of consciousness. That is the principle Jesus taught when he said, "It is done unto you as you believe." Not as you hope, not as you wish, not as you want, as you times believe asterisk. And belief is simply an idea accepted by your subconscious mind. So when someone says to you, I just can't seem to make money, or relationships never work out for me, or I always get sick this time of year, what they're really saying is, I have accepted this as truth, I have given it the stamp of belief, and now my subconscious is faithfully reproducing it in my experience. But here's what most people miss. They think the problem is times out there asterisk. They think the economy is bad, or people are difficult, or their body is weak. But the real issue, the only issue, is the mental acceptance. You see, your subconscious mind doesn't care whether the idea you give it is true or false, good or bad, constructive or destructive. It simply accepts what you impress upon it with feeling and conviction. It's like a garden that will grow whatever seed you plant, whether it's a rose or a weed. The soil doesn't judge. It doesn't say, oh, I won't grow that because it's a weed. It just grows what you plant. And your subconscious is the same. If you plant thoughts of lack, it grows lack. If you plant thoughts of abundance, it grows abundance. If you plant thoughts of illness, it grows illness. If you plant thoughts of health, it grows health. The law is impersonal, the law is impartial, the law is absolute, and that's actually wonderful news. Because it means you're not at the mercy of chance, or fate, or other people's opinions. You're governed by a law that responds to your mental attitude. Change the attitude, change the result. It's that simple. Now, I know what you might be thinking, but Joseph, I've tried positive thinking, I've tried affirmations, and nothing changed. And I understand that frustration, but let me tell you why it didn't work. Because affirmations without belief are just noise. They're words floating in the air with no emotional charge behind them. And your subconscious mind doesn't respond to words alone. It responds to feeling. It responds to conviction. It responds to the state of consciousness you embody when you speak. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're standing in front of a mirror saying, I am wealthy, I am abundant, money flows to me easily. But as you're saying it, there's a voice in the back of your mind whispering, who are you kidding? Look at your bank account. You can barely pay rent. What's happening here? You're affirming one thing with your lips, but your heart, your subconscious, is affirming the opposite. And the subconscious always wins. Always. Because it's the subconscious that runs the show. It's the subconscious that controls 95% of your thoughts, your decisions, your behaviors. So when you say affirmations mechanically, without feeling, without faith, you're essentially trying to plant seeds in concrete. Nothing's going to grow there. Joseph Murphy taught that affirmations must be felt to be real. You must enter into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You must imagine yourself already being, already having, already experiencing what you desire. Not as a future event, but as a present fact. This is where most people go wrong. They treat affirmations like magic spells. Like if they just repeat the words enough times, the universe will bend to their will. But the universe doesn't respond to repetition, it responds to vibration, to the emotional frequency you're broadcasting. And here's what's really happening when your affirmations don't work. You're in a state of lack. You're desperate. You're needy. And desperation is the loudest affirmation of all. It screams, I don't have this. I need this. I'm incomplete without this. And the subconscious mind, being the faithful servant it is, says, understood, you want to continue experiencing lack and need. Let me create more situations that match this feeling. That's why nothing changes. Because you're affirming from the wrong state of consciousness. So what's the solution? The solution is to shift your state before you affirm. To enter into the feeling of the wish fulfilled first, and then speak from that place. This is what separates the masters from the strugglers. The masters don't try to use affirmations to get into the state. They get into the state first, and then their words naturally reflect that reality. Let me give you a practical example. Let's say you want financial abundance. You've been repeating affirmations like, I am wealthy, or money flows to me easily, for months, but nothing's changing. Why? Because when you say those words, you're still feeling broke. You're still in the consciousness of lack. So here's what you do instead. Before you say a single affirmation, you sit quietly and you imagine what it would feel like to have abundant wealth right now. Not tomorrow, not when the money shows up, but right now. You feel the relief, the freedom, the ease. The lightness in your chest when you know all your bills are paid and there's more than enough. You might imagine checking your bank account and seeing a number that makes you smile. You might imagine the sensation of buying something you want without checking the price tag first. You might imagine the peace that comes from knowing you're completely financially secure. And you stay with that feeling until it becomes real in your awareness, until your body relaxes into it, until it stops feeling like pretend and starts feeling like truth. Then, from that place, you speak your affirmations, and notice how different they sound now. I am wealthy isn't a hope or a wish anymore, it's a statement of fact. It's you describing what you're already experiencing in consciousness. This is the secret that changes everything. You're not trying to convince yourself of something that isn't true. You're simply verbalizing what you've already accepted as true within. And here's what happens next. Your subconscious mind, which has now been impressed with this new state, begins to work on your behalf. It starts attracting circumstances, ideas, opportunities, and people that match this consciousness of wealth. You don't have to figure out the how. That's not your job. Your job is to remain faithful to the state of wealth consciousness. The how is the province of your subconscious mind, which has infinite intelligence and knows ways and means that your conscious mind cannot even conceive. Let me share something Murphy emphasized repeatedly. When you're living from the end, you're not sitting around passively waiting for money to fall from the sky. You're inspired to action. But it's effortless action, it's joyous action. You're not struggling or forcing. You're moving with a sense of rightness, as if invisible hands are guiding you. A woman once came to Murphy's lectures drowning in debt. She had tried affirmations, she had tried visualization, but nothing worked. Why? Because every time she affirmed wealth, she felt the contradiction. She felt the lie. So Murphy taught her this technique. Before bed each night, she would simply feel the relief of being debt-free. Not imagine it, not visualize it, feel it. She would lie in bed and say to herself, "How wonderful it feels to be completely free of debt. How peaceful I feel. How grateful I am." She did this every single night, and within 3 months, a series of completely unexpected events unfolded. An old insurance policy she had forgotten about paid out. A former employer discovered they owed her back pay. A distant relative left her an inheritance she never knew was coming. The total amount? Almost to the dollar what she needed to clear every single debt. Coincidence? Murphy would say there are no coincidences. There's only consciousness expressing itself. She changed her state of consciousness, and her outer world rearranged itself to match. This is the critical understanding. You're not manipulating the universe. You're not using some kind of mental magic trick. You're simply aligning yourself with a state of consciousness, and that state naturally, inevitably, produces corresponding effects in your world. This is a law, just like the law of gravity. You don't have to believe in gravity for it to work. You can deny it all you want, but if you step off a ledge, you'll fall. The same principle applies here. You don't need to believe in the law of assumption for it to operate. It's already operating. Every moment of every day, you're assuming something about yourself, about your relationships, about your finances, about your health, and those assumptions are crystallizing into your experience. The only question is, are you assuming consciously or unconsciously? Most people are running on autopilot. They're replaying the same mental loops they've had for years. The same doubts, the same fears, the same limiting stories. And then they wonder why nothing changes. They're like someone planting weeds and expecting roses. Let me give you a practical example. Let's say you want to improve your relationship with someone, a partner, a family member, a coworker. The old approach would be to try to change them. You'd analyze what they're doing wrong. You'd bring up past grievances. You'd argue. You'd justify your position. And all of that keeps you locked in the same dynamic because you're still assuming they are a certain way. But what if you changed your assumption? What if, instead of seeing them as difficult, stubborn, or unkind, you began to assume they are loving, cooperative, and understanding? Not because they've proven it, not because they've earned it, but because you're choosing to occupy that state of consciousness. At first, your rational mind will protest. It'll say, "But that's not true. Look at how they treated me last week. Look at what they said." And yes, that was true in the past. But the past only has power if you keep reviving it with your attention. The moment you shift your assumption, You change the energy you're bringing to that relationship. You stop defending. You stop expecting conflict. You start interacting from a place of peace. And here's what happens: they respond differently. Not because you lectured them, not because you explained yourself better, but because you stopped confirming the old pattern with your consciousness. You withdrew your attention from the problem and placed it entirely on the solution. This is what most people never do. They keep revisiting the wound. They keep telling the story of what went wrong. They keep explaining to friends, to family, to themselves why things are the way they are. And every time they tell that story, they're impressing it deeper into subconscious mind. Every time you say, "I always struggle with money," you're giving a command. Every time you say, "People always let me down," you're writing a script. Every time you say, "This is just how I am," you're sealing a fate that was never fixed to begin with. Your subconscious doesn't argue. It doesn't say, "Are you sure?" It just says, "Yes, sir," and goes to work making it true. So the question becomes, what are you impressing right now? Not with your wishes, not with your hopes, but with your actual, repeated inner speech. Because here's the truth most people avoid. You can't trick subconscious mind. You can say affirmations all day long, but if underneath them you're still identifying with lack, fear, and limitation, the subconscious knows. It responds to what you really believe, not what you pretend to believe. That's why people do affirmations for months and see no change. They're saying, "I am wealthy," while feeling poor. They're saying, "I am confident," while trembling inside. And the subconscious picks up the feeling, not the words. Feeling is the secret. Not emotion, not hype, but the quiet inner knowing that what you're claiming is already true. When you sit in your room and close your eyes and imagine your wish fulfilled, you're not trying to manufacture feelings. You're entering into the naturalness of the state. It's like when you think of your own name. There's no effort, no force. You just know it's yours. That's the feeling you're aiming for. That calm certainty, that inner yes. And once you touch that, even for a moment, you've planted the seed. You don't need to keep digging it up to check if it's growing. You don't need to panic when you don't see results the next morning. You simply return to that inner state again and again until it becomes your natural dwelling place. This is the secret the ancient mystics knew. This is what they meant when they said the kingdom of heaven is within. They weren't talking about some distant reward. They were talking about a state of consciousness you can enter right now. And here's what happens when you truly grasp this. Your entire relationship with manifestation changes. You stop chasing, you stop begging, you stop trying to manipulate the outer world into giving you what you want. Instead, you become the person who already has it, not pretending, not faking it, actually embodying that state of being. I've watched people transform their entire lives when they finally understood this distinction. I remember a woman who came to one of my seminars, completely desperate about her financial situation. She had tried every manifestation technique. She had vision boards covering her walls. She had affirmations written on sticky notes everywhere, but nothing was working. And you know why? Because every single one of those techniques was coming from a place of lack. Every affirmation was really saying, "I don't have this yet, so I'm trying to get it." I taught her this principle. I told her to stop all the techniques, stop the vision boards, stop the desperate affirmations. Instead, I asked her one simple question: how would you feel right now if your financial worries were completely resolved? She closed her eyes. And, for the first time, she allowed herself to actually feel it. Not imagine having money, but feel the relief, the peace, the security, the freedom. That feeling was her seed. That was what she needed to plant. I told her to return to that feeling every single day, not to get money, but simply to dwell in that state, to make it her home. Within 3 months, everything had shifted. A job opportunity appeared that doubled her income. A debt she thought was permanent was suddenly forgiven due to a clerical error. Money started flowing from directions she never expected. But here's the crucial part. By the time these things happened, she barely reacted, because she had already been living in the state of financial security for months. The outer circumstances were simply catching up to her inner reality. This is the paradox that so few people understand. You don't wait for the manifestation to feel relief. You feel the relief first, and then the manifestation has no choice but to follow. Most people have it completely backwards. They say, "I'll be happy when I get the money," or I'll feel secure when I see the bank account balance. But the universe doesn't respond to your wishful thinking about the future. It responds to your state of being right now. Let me tell you about something that happened to me personally. Years ago, when I was first studying these principles, I was living in a cramped apartment, struggling financially, working a job I didn't enjoy. Every morning I would wake up and immediately feel the weight of my circumstances pressing down on me. I would look around that small room and think, this isn't where I'm supposed to be. This isn't who I'm supposed to be. And that thought, that feeling of lack, would color my entire day. I was trying to manifest a better life, but I was doing it from a state of resistance to my current life. Then one day, something shifted. I was reading Neville Goddard and he said something that struck me like lightning. You must feel yourself into the new state. Not think yourself, not wish yourself, feel yourself. So I made a decision. Every morning before I even opened my eyes, I would lie in that small bed and I would feel what it would be like to wake up in my ideal life. I didn't visualize elaborate scenes. I didn't repeat endless affirmations. I simply allowed myself to feel the deep contentment, the quiet joy, the sense of rightness that would accompany my desired reality. And here's what's interesting. Within days, my experience of that small apartment began to change. The circumstances hadn't changed yet, but I had. I started noticing things I'd never appreciated before. The morning light through the window. The simplicity of having everything I needed in one small space. The freedom of not being attached to material possessions. I wasn't pretending to be happy. I wasn't forcing gratitude. I was genuinely experiencing a shift in my state of being. And from that new state, different thoughts arose. Different actions became obvious. Different opportunities became visible. Within 6 months, everything had changed. New job, new apartment, new income level. But the external changes weren't the real miracle. The miracle was that I had learned to change my state independent of circumstances. I could feel abundant whether my bank account showed it or not. I could feel peaceful whether my circumstances were chaotic or calm. I could feel loved whether someone was present or absent. That was true freedom. And here's what nobody tells you about that kind of freedom. It becomes magnetic. When you're no longer desperate for circumstances to change, when you're no longer anxiously monitoring reality for proof that it's working, when you can genuinely feel fulfilled before the manifestation arrives, that's when everything shifts. Because desperation repels, anxiety blocks, need creates distance between you and what you want. But fulfillment is the ultimate attractor. When you feel complete, you naturally draw in experiences that match that completeness. Think about it in human terms. Who are you more drawn to, someone who desperately needs your validation, or someone who is so secure in themselves that your presence is simply an addition to their already fulfilling life? The second person, always. Reality operates the same way. When you feel poor, you push money away. When you feel lonely, you repel connection. When you feel sick, you magnetize more illness. Not because you're being punished, but because your state is literally the broadcasting signal that determines what you receive. So I stopped waiting for my manifestations to feel good. I felt good first. I stopped waiting for success to feel confident. I felt confident first. I stopped waiting for love to feel worthy. I felt worthy first. And this is where most people get tripped up. They think, but isn't that living in denial? Isn't that just pretending everything's fine when it's not? No, this isn't about denial. This isn't about pretending. This is about choosing which reality you're going to anchor into. Your current circumstances are simply the lag between your old state and your new state. They're the echo of yesterday's consciousness. If you keep reacting to them, if you keep letting them determine your state, you'll keep creating more of the same. You'll be stuck in an endless loop of yesterday. But when you choose your state independent of circumstances, you break the loop. You step into a new timeline. You become the cause rather than the effect. I started treating every challenging moment as an opportunity to practice this. Traffic jam? Opportunity to feel peaceful anyway. Unexpected bill? Opportunity to feel abundant anyway. Rejection? Opportunity to feel worthy anyway. Loneliness? Opportunity to feel whole anyway. You see, the world has been teaching us backwards. It's been telling us that when you get the relationship, then you'll feel loved. When you get the money, then you'll feel secure. When you achieve the goal, then you'll feel proud. But that's the illusion. That's the trap that keeps millions of people stuck in endless waiting. The truth that will change everything for you is this: you must feel it first. You must become it internally before it can manifest externally. This is not positive thinking, this is not pretending, this is quantum mechanics at the level of consciousness. When you decide, and I mean truly decide, to feel abundant while your bank account is still growing, you shift your frequency. You stop broadcasting the signal of lack. You stop sending out that desperate energy that actually repels what you want. And here's what nobody tells you: the feeling is the fortune, the internal state is the treasure. I've watched people finally get the thing they've been chasing for years, only to discover they still don't feel the way they thought they would. The promotion doesn't make them feel valuable. The relationship doesn't make them feel complete. The recognition doesn't make them feel worthy. Because they were trying to extract the feeling from the external circumstance, when all along, the feeling was something they needed to generate from within. So what does this look like practically? It means you practice the state, you rehearse the emotion, you train yourself to access the feeling of having before the having appears. Before you fall asleep at night, instead of scrolling through what you lack, you deliberately enter the feeling state of your wish fulfilled, not imagining it vaguely in the distance, but feeling it as a present reality. What would it feel like if it were already done? How would you carry yourself? What quality would be in your chest? What ease would be in your breath? You cultivate that, you practice that, you become intimate with that frequency, and then, and this is crucial, you detach from the how and the when. You let the universe, your subconscious mind, the infinite intelligence that orchestrates every breath, every heartbeat, every perfectly timed miracle, handle the details. Because here's what happens when you try to control the how: you limit the possibilities, you box in the infinite. You say, it has to come through this door, at this time, in this exact way. And the universe, in its generosity, might honor that request. But what if there were 10 doors? What if there were 100? What if the perfect answer was ready to arrive through a channel you never even considered? I remember working with a woman who wanted a new home. She had it all figured out. It had to be in a specific neighborhood, on a specific street, through a specific real estate agent. She affirmed. She visualized. But she also gripped so tightly to her plan that she created resistance. Month after month, nothing. Then one day, she came to me, exhausted. She said, I'm letting go. I'm trusting that the right home will find me. 2 weeks later, a colleague mentioned a house that wasn't even on the market yet, different neighborhood, different agent, completely outside her plan. She went to see it. It was better than anything she'd imagined, but it could only come to her after she released the stranglehold on how it had to happen. That's the paradox of manifestation. You must be specific in your desire but flexible in your pathway. You must be clear about the what but completely open about the how. You plant the seed with intention, then you trust the soil, the rain, the sun, the intelligence of nature to bring it to bloom. So when you've done the mental work, when you've aligned with the feeling, when you've impressed your subconscious with the reality of your wish fulfilled, you release it. You don't check the mailbox every 5 minutes. You don't dig up the seed to see if it's sprouting. You live as though it's already done, because in the realm of mind it is. And here's what happens when you do that: when you truly let it go and assume the wish fulfilled, life starts arranging itself. Doors open that you didn't even knock on. People reach out with opportunities you never advertised for. Resources appear. Solutions emerge from directions you weren't even looking. Why? Because your subconscious mind is now working with the full force of belief behind it. It's no longer conflicted. It's no longer divided between desire and doubt. It's unified. It's aligned. And when your subconscious is aligned with your conscious intention, the universe has no choice but to respond. Murphy called this the law of reversed effort. The more you strain, the less you gain. The more you relax into the assumption, the faster it manifests. Think about trying to remember a name. The harder you try, the more it escapes you. But the moment you let it go and move on to something else, boom, it pops right into your head. That's not coincidence. That's how the mind works. Your subconscious doesn't respond to effort. It responds to acceptance. So when you plant your seed and walk away, you're giving your subconscious permission to do what it does best: create, connect, orchestrate, and deliver. You're not abandoning your desire. You're honoring it by refusing to suffocate it with desperation. And here's the beautiful part. This process doesn't require you to be perfect. You don't need to hold the feeling 24/7. You don't need to never doubt again. You're human. Doubts will come. Fears will whisper. But you don't have to entertain them. When doubt shows up, you simply return to the assumption. You remind yourself, I've already impressed this on my subconscious. It's done. I don't need to do it again. You don't argue with the doubt. You don't fight it. You just calmly redirect your attention back to the truth you've chosen. This is the gentle discipline of faith. Not rigid, not forceful, just consistent. And over time, that consistency builds momentum. The assumption becomes more natural. The feeling becomes more familiar. And before you know it, you're no longer pretending you're living it. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. The more you practice living in the end, the less important the how times becomes. You stop obsessing over the mechanics. You stop mapping out every step. You stop micromanaging the universe. Because when you truly assume you already have it, you trust that the path will unfold. You trust that the bridge of incidents will appear. You trust that opportunities, people, and circumstances will align in ways you couldn't have orchestrated on your own. This is not passivity. This is not sitting back and doing nothing. This is powerful, deliberate assumption backed by faith. You still take action, but your actions come from the state of times having asterisk, not from the state of times chasing asterisk. You move differently. You decide differently. You show up differently. Think about it. When you're trying to get something, your actions reek of desperation. You're always strategizing, always forcing, always looking over your shoulder to see if it's working yet. But when you assume you already times that person, when you live from the end, you act with calm certainty. You make choices that align with your assumed identity. You walk through doors that match your new reality. And here's the magic. Those actions feel natural. They don't feel forced. They feel inevitable. Let's say you've been affirming wealth. Living in the end means you start making financial decisions like a wealthy person would. Not reckless decisions, but confident ones. You invest in yourself. You stop penny pinching out of fear. You treat money like a tool, not a scarce resource you have to hoard. You're not pretending to be rich while ignoring your bills. You're embodying the times, consciousness times of wealth, the inner state that times produces times wealth. Living in the end means you stop waiting for permission. You stop waiting for proof. You stop waiting for someone to validate your worth or your dreams. You give yourself permission. You validate yourself. You decide that the thing you want is already yours in consciousness, and you let that decision reshape everything. You stop waiting for the world to agree with you. You stop looking for evidence in your bank account, in your relationships, in your body, in your circumstances. You stop giving your power away to facts that were built by yesterday's consciousness. You become the author. You become the one who decides what's real. And the moment you do that, the moment you truly claim it, the whole universe begins to rearrange itself to match your inner conviction. Now let me be clear. This doesn't mean you deny reality. It doesn't mean you pretend everything is fine when it isn't. It doesn't mean you spiritually bypass your pain or ignore your responsibility. It means you stop letting the outer world tell you who you are. It means you stop accepting limitation as your final truth. It means you recognize that what you see around you is not fixed, it's fluid. It's responsive. It's waiting for a new instruction from the only authority that matters, your own consciousness. This is the secret the great mystics knew. This is what Jesus meant when he said, "It is done unto you as you believe." This is what Neville Goddard taught when he said, "Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled." This is what Joseph Murphy revealed when he said, "Your subconscious mind accepts what you impress upon it and brings it to pass." They were all pointing to the same truth. Your inner world creates your outer world. Not sometimes, not eventually, not if you're lucky, always. And when you really get this, when you stop arguing with it, stop negotiating with it, stop testing it with doubt and skepticism, you become unstoppable. You walk differently, you speak differently, you make decisions differently, because you're no longer operating from lack. You're no longer hoping, wishing, trying to make something happen. You're living from the end. You're living as the person who already has it. You're embodying the state of consciousness that matches your desire, and that state becomes the bridge between where you are and where you're going. This is the shift. This is the turning point. This is where everything changes. Because when you stop waiting and start living, the universe rushes to meet you halfway. I've watched this transformation happen time and time again. People who spent years in spiritual preparation suddenly realize they were already prepared 3 years ago. People who kept saying, "I'm not ready yet," discover that readiness isn't a destination, it's a decision. There was a teacher who spent a decade studying before she felt qualified to share her knowledge. 10 years of courses, certifications, workshops, 10 years of almost ready. Then one day, she saw a young coach with half her experience and twice her confidence building a thriving practice. That's when it hit her. He wasn't more qualified. He was just less willing to wait. She launched her program the next month. Within 6 weeks, she had her first paying clients. Within 3 months, she had a waiting list. The knowledge she thought she needed, she already had it 5 years ago. The permission she was seeking, it could only come from herself. This is what I need you to understand. The gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't as wide as you think. It's not a canyon that requires years to cross. Most of the time, it's a single step you've been refusing to take. One decision, one action, one moment of courage. That's all that separates your current reality from your desired reality. You think you need more time, but what you really need is more conviction. You think you need more knowledge, but what you really need is more action. You think you need more resources, but what you really need is more resourcefulness. The universe doesn't reward perfection, it rewards participation. It doesn't respond to your intentions, it responds to your commitment. So what would happen if you stopped preparing and started performing? What would happen if you stopped rehearsing your life and started living it? What would happen if you treated today not as another day of getting ready, but as the day you've been getting ready for? Everything would change. Not eventually, not someday, right now. This is why affirmations alone aren't enough. This is why visualizing your dream life while your body screams fake won't work. You have to bridge the gap between your conscious desire and your subconscious belief. And you do that by giving your subconscious proof it can trust. Not external proof, internal proof. Start where you are, right here, right now. If you can't feel abundant thinking about $1 million, then find the amount you can feel abundant about. Maybe it's $100, maybe it's 20, maybe it's just the spare change in your pocket that you suddenly recognize as wealth instead of dismissing as nothing. Your subconscious doesn't care about the amount, it cares about the feeling. When you genuinely feel gratitude for $20, you activate the same abundance frequency as someone feeling gratitude for 20,000. The subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between big and small. It only knows the quality of the feeling. This is the secret ladder technique that almost no one teaches correctly. You don't leap from poverty consciousness to millionaire consciousness. You can't. Your nervous system won't allow it. Your subconscious will reject it as fantasy. Instead, you build a ladder. Step by step, feeling by feeling. You start with what feels real to you. You find the version of your desire that creates genuine emotion in your body. Then you live there. You marinate in that feeling until it becomes your new baseline. Once that feeling is natural, effortless, automatic, you climb to the next rung. Maybe you start visualizing $100 and it feels real. Good. Stay there. Feel it. Let your body learn what that abundance feels like until checking your bank account and seeing that 100 no longer creates excitement or relief. It just is. That's when you're ready for the next level. Now 200 feels possible. Then 500. Then 1,000. You're not lying to yourself. You're expanding yourself. Training your nervous system to hold bigger and bigger realities. And that training, it happens through repetition with feeling. Not just repeating words like a robot. Not just saying affirmations while your body is screaming the opposite, but repetition with emotional conviction. You say it, you feel it, you embody it, you live from that place even before the evidence arrives. This is where most people quit. They try for a week, maybe 2. They say their affirmations in the morning, check their phone, see nothing has changed, and decide it doesn't work. But you wouldn't go to the gym once and expect a six-pack. You wouldn't plant a seed and dig it up the next day to see why it hasn't bloomed yet. Your subconscious mind is the same. It needs time. It needs consistency. It needs your unwavering faith that the process is working, even when you can't see it yet. And here's something powerful. The subconscious doesn't care if you're programming it consciously or unconsciously. It's always being programmed, every thought, every belief. Every story you tell yourself. So if you're not deliberately choosing what goes in, the world will choose for you. The news will program you. Your environment will program you. Other people's doubts will program you. That's why protecting your mental diet is sacred work. It's not about being in denial or avoiding reality. It's about being intentional with what you allow to take root in your inner world. Because that inner world, it's the blueprint for everything you experience outside. Now, let me address something that comes up all the time. People ask, what if I'm doing everything right, but I still don't see results? What if I'm affirming, visualizing, feeling it real, and nothing is happening? First, I want you to check your attachment to the outcome. Are you doing the inner work from a place of lack, desperately scanning your reality for proof? Or are you doing it from a place of overflow, already feeling fulfilled? Because if you're constantly looking for evidence, you're actually affirming the absence of what you want. You're telling your subconscious, I don't have it yet. The real power comes when you stop needing it to show up. When you're so certain, so at peace, that whether it manifests today or next month doesn't shake you. That's the frequency that magnetizes miracles. Because here's the truth. The universe doesn't respond to desperation. It responds to alignment. Think of it like tuning a radio. When you're desperate, when you're checking and chasing and begging, you're on static. You're on a frequency of lack. But when you relax into knowing, when you embody the feeling of already having it, you tune into the exact station where your desire is broadcasting. I know someone who wanted a relationship. She affirmed. She visualized. She did everything right. But every date felt like an audition. Every text message felt like a test. She was operating from fear of being alone, fear of missing out, fear that maybe she wasn't enough. Then something shifted. She stopped looking for someone to complete her. She started enjoying her own company. She decorated her home the way she wanted. She traveled solo. She stopped treating every potential partner like they held the key to her happiness. And within 3 months, she met someone who matched her energy perfectly. Not because she stopped wanting love, but because she stopped needing it to feel whole. That's the paradox of manifestation. The moment you stop needing something to feel complete, it shows up. Because you've stopped pushing it away with your desperation. Your subconscious doesn't understand words the way your conscious mind does. It understands feelings. It understands the energy behind your thoughts. So when you say, I want $1 million, but you feel broke, anxious, and unworthy, your subconscious receives the feeling, not the words. This is why affirmations alone don't work for most people. They're repeating words without shifting the internal state. They're saying, I am wealthy, while looking at their empty bank account with dread. The real work is feeling wealthy before the money shows up, acting from abundance before the evidence appears, treating yourself with the respect you'll have when you're successful, not after but now. Let me ask you something. If you already had everything you wanted, how would you walk into a room? How would you speak? How would you treat yourself? What would you stop tolerating? Start being that person now. Because your external reality is just a delayed reflection of your internal state. Change the inside and the outside has no choice but to follow. The quantum physicists discovered something revolutionary. Observation changes reality. The act of measuring a particle determines its state. Before observation, it exists in all possible states simultaneously. Your consciousness works the same way. When you observe yourself as poor, you collapse the quantum field into that reality. When you observe yourself as wealthy, you collapse it into abundance. This isn't philosophy. This is physics. But here's what most people don't understand. You can't just observe occasionally. You can't check in on your wealth consciousness once a week during meditation and expect transformation. You must become a persistent observer of your desired reality. Think of it like tuning a radio. You don't tune to your favorite station for 5 seconds and then immediately turn the dial back to static. You stay tuned to that frequency. You remain there. You let that signal come through clearly and consistently. Your subconscious mind is receiving broadcasts 24 hours a day. The question is, which station are you tuned to? Most people spend 23 hours tuned to the poverty station, broadcasting fear, lack, and limitation. Then they meditate for 1 hour on abundance and wonder why nothing changes. It's not about effort, it's about consistency of signal. I remember a woman who came to one of my lectures. She had been affirming prosperity for months with no results. I asked her to describe her daily thought patterns. Within minutes, the truth emerged. She would affirm abundance in the morning. Then she'd check her bank account and feel anxiety. She'd see a bill and feel dread. She'd pass a wealthy neighborhood and feel resentment. She'd see a beggar and think, that could be me. 20 minutes of positive input, 23 hours of negative broadcasting, and she wondered why her circumstances didn't change. I told her something that transformed her life. Your subconscious doesn't respond to your occasional thoughts, it responds to your habitual dwelling place. Where do you habitually dwell? In the feeling of wealth or the feeling of lack? In the consciousness of health or the consciousness of disease? In the vibration of love or the vibration of fear? Your habitual dwelling place is your true prayer, and that prayer is always answered. So the question becomes, where do you live most of the time? Not physically, but mentally and emotionally. What is the atmosphere of your inner world? Because that atmosphere is creating your experience moment by moment. When you live in gratitude, you attract more to be grateful for. When you live in scarcity, you see lack everywhere you look. When you live in love, love finds you in the most unexpected places. This is why the ancient teachers spoke of guarding your heart above all else. Not because emotions are dangerous, but because your emotional state is your creative state. Your feelings are not merely reactions to life, they are the very substance from which your life is formed. I want you to become deeply aware of this. Throughout your day, pause and ask yourself, what frequency am I broadcasting right now? Am I dwelling in trust or worry? Am I radiating peace or tension? Am I vibrating love or fear? And here's what's beautiful. You don't have to judge yourself when you discover you've been dwelling in a lower state. There's no need for self-criticism or shame. Simply notice it, acknowledge it, and then gently, deliberately choose again. You see, the power to shift your vibrational state is always available to you. Always. You're never stuck in any frequency. A single thought, held with feeling, can shift your entire state in moments. Think of a moment when you received unexpected good news. Remember how instantaneously your entire being shifted? Your body relaxed, your face brightened, your breath deepened. In one moment, everything changed because your inner state changed. You have that same power right now. Not by forcing or straining, but by consciously directing your attention toward thoughts that feel good, toward memories that warm your heart, toward possibilities that excite your soul. This is the practice. This is the path. To become so aware of your inner climate that you can adjust it as easily as you adjust the temperature in your home. Too cold? Turn up the warmth of gratitude. Too dark? Let in the light of hopeful expectation. Too heavy? Open the windows of your mind to fresh possibilities. Your subconscious mind is always listening to the dominant tone of your consciousness. It's always asking, what does my conscious mind predominantly feel and believe? So speak to it now with kindness, with patience, with expectation. Tell your subconscious, I am ready to release what no longer serves me. I am ready to embrace new patterns. I am ready to succeed. Your subconscious doesn't need force. It needs consistency. It needs repetition wrapped in feeling. It needs you to stop fighting yourself and start aligning with the truth of who you really are. And here's something crucial that many people overlook. Your subconscious doesn't just respond to your words. It responds to the emotional atmosphere you create within yourself throughout the day. You can affirm prosperity 1,000 times, but if you spend your day steeped in anxiety, resentment, and worry, which message do you think penetrates deeper? The fleeting affirmation or the sustained emotional state? This is why cultivation of inner peace is not a luxury. It's a necessity. It's the fertile ground in which all your desires take root. When you maintain a calm, confident, expectant inner state, you're not just feeling good. You're programming. You're instructing. You're creating. Every moment of peace is a seed planted. Every moment of gratitude is water poured on that seed. Every visualization filled with joy is sunlight nourishing its growth. You don't need to be perfect, you need to be intentional. There will be moments when old patterns resurface, when doubt creeps back in, when circumstances seem to contradict everything you've been affirming. These moments are not failures, they're tests. They're opportunities to demonstrate your new understanding. In those moments, you don't abandon your practice. You lean into it more deeply. You remind yourself, I know the law. I know how this works. Appearances are not my master, my consciousness is. This is the difference between someone who dabbles in these principles and someone who masters them. The master doesn't quit when things get challenging. The master understands that persistence in right thinking always produces results. Your subconscious is infinitely patient. It will wait for your clarity, it will wait for your decision. But once you commit, once you truly align your thoughts and feelings with your desire, it moves heaven and earth to make it manifest. And that commitment is not loud, it is not desperate, it is not begging or pleading or bargaining with the universe. True commitment is quiet. It is calm. It is certain. It is the woman who decides she will start her business, and instead of waiting for the perfect moment, she takes one small action today. She writes the first paragraph of her website. She opens the bank account. She tells one trusted friend about her vision. And in that simple act, she signals to her subconscious mind, this is real, this is happening. It is the man who wants to heal his relationship with his child, and instead of rehearsing past grievances, he imagines the conversation going well. He sees himself listening with patience. He feels the warmth of reconciliation. And when the moment comes, his subconscious guides his words, his tone, his presence, because he has already lived it in his mind. You see, your subconscious does not need your fear to protect you. It does not need your doubt to keep you safe. What it needs is your faith, your vision, your unwavering assumption that what you desire is already yours in the invisible realm, and now it is simply making its way into form. This is not wishful thinking. This is the mechanics of creation. This is how life works. You do not create something new out of nothing. You align yourself with what already exists in potential, and you allow it to materialize through you. Think of a seed planted in the ground. You do not see it growing. You do not hear it pushing through the soil, but something is happening beneath the surface. Roots are forming. Life is stirring. And if you keep watering it, if you keep providing the conditions for growth, one day it breaks through, one day it becomes visible. Your desire is the same. You plant it with your thought, you water it with your feeling, you nurture it with your faith, and you trust the process, even when you cannot see the evidence yet, because the evidence is not the starting point. The evidence is the result. You do not wait for proof before you believe. You believe, and then the proof appears. That is the inversion of the old way. That is the reversal that changes everything. You have been trained since childhood to wait for the world to confirm your worth. You have been taught to look outside for validation, for evidence, for permission. You have been conditioned to let the external dictate the internal, and that is the trap. That is the wheel that keeps you spinning in place. The subconscious does not know the difference between what has happened and what you vividly imagine with feeling. It accepts what you impress upon it. It does not argue. It does not question. It simply creates. So when you impress the feeling of your wish fulfilled upon your subconscious, when you live in the state of already having what you desire, your subconscious begins to reorganize your outer world to match that inner conviction. It draws to you the people, the circumstances, the opportunities that correspond to your inner state. This is not magic. This is law. This is the way consciousness operates. And here is where most people stumble. They affirm, they visualize, they declare, but they do not believe. They go through the motions, but their dominant feeling is still lack, still fear, still doubt, and because feeling is the language of the subconscious, it is that dominant feeling that gets impressed. It is that dominant feeling that gets expressed in their outer world. You cannot fool your subconscious. You cannot trick it with words while your heart trembles with fear. It responds to what you truly feel, not to what you pretend to feel. So the work is not about repeating affirmations mechanically. The work is about cultivating the feeling. The work is about dwelling in the state. The work is about making the inner reality so vivid, so real, so natural that your subconscious has no choice but to accept it. And when it accepts it, it externalizes it. When it accepts it, your world begins to reflect it back to you. This is why I tell you, live from the end. Do not live in the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Live as if you are already there. Think from that state. Feel from that state. Speak from that state. Because the moment you do, you are no longer trying to get somewhere. You are already there. And from that inner knowing, The outer circumstances must conform. You see, this is why so many manifestation techniques fail. They approach it from the wrong end. They try to manipulate the outer world while ignoring the inner truth. They want to force reality to bend to their will, when reality is already shaped by their consciousness. But when you understand that your imagination is not separate from your reality, that it is the creative power itself, you stop trying to make things happen. You simply accept what you have imagined as already done. And this is where faith enters. Not blind faith, not hoping against hope, but the faith that comes from understanding. The faith that says, I know how this works. I know that my consciousness is the only creative power. I know that what I have assumed in imagination must externalize in my world. This is not wishful thinking. This is scientific certainty based on spiritual law. Let me give you another example. A woman once told me she wanted to heal a broken relationship with her daughter. For years, they had barely spoken. Every conversation ended in hurt and misunderstanding. She had tried everything: therapy, letters, mediation. Nothing worked. The more she tried to fix it on the outside, the worse it became. Because she was trying to change her daughter, and you cannot change anyone but yourself. You cannot force another person to think or feel differently. But you can change your own consciousness, and when you do, everyone in your world changes in relation to you. So I told her to stop trying to fix the relationship. Stop rehearsing the hurt. Stop justifying her position. Instead, imagine the relationship already healed. See your daughter smiling at you with warmth. Hear her voice filled with affection. Feel the ease and love between you. Don't imagine how it will happen. Don't worry about the steps. Just live in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Assume the relationship is already what you want it to be. She practiced this every night before sleep. At first, it felt forced, almost absurd. How could she imagine something so contrary to her present reality? But she persisted, and gradually, something shifted inside her. She stopped feeling angry, stopped feeling wounded. She began to feel the love she had been imagining. And within weeks, her daughter reached out. A simple text at first, then a call, then a visit. The reconciliation unfolded naturally, without effort, without force, because the inner change had already occurred, and the outer world simply reflected it back to her. She later told me that the most miraculous part wasn't that her daughter returned, it was that she herself had become free. Free from the anxiety, the guilt, the endless mental loops that had kept her imprisoned for months. The outer reconciliation was beautiful, but the inner liberation was the true miracle. This is what happens when you stop trying to control outcomes and start focusing on states of consciousness. You move from manipulation to manifestation, from forcing to allowing, from desperate pleading to confident assumption. Think about how you've been approaching your own challenges. Have you been trying to control the external circumstances? Have you been pushing, convincing, strategizing, planning your way to a solution? And how's that working for you? I'm not being flippant. I genuinely want you to consider this, because most of the exhaustion you feel, most of the frustration, comes from trying to control what you were never meant to control. You were never meant to control other people, external events, or the timing of outcomes. What you were meant to control, what you have complete dominion over, is your own consciousness, your thoughts, your assumptions, your inner conversations, your emotional states. This is your kingdom. This is where your power resides. And when you exercise power in your own kingdom, when you establish order in your own consciousness, the outer world has no choice but to conform. Not because you're forcing it, but because inner and outer are one reality expressing at different levels. This is why affirmations without corresponding feeling are empty words. This is why visualization without belief is just daydreaming. This is why positive thinking without inner transformation is superficial optimism that crumbles at the first challenge. The work must go deeper. You must actually become the person who already has what you desire. Not pretend to be. Not act like. Actually become. And becoming happens in consciousness first, always in consciousness first. You don't become wealthy and then feel abundant. You feel abundant in consciousness and wealth follows. You don't become loved and then feel worthy. You feel worthy in consciousness, and love finds you. You don't become successful and then feel confident. You feel confident in consciousness, and success becomes inevitable. This is the understanding that changes everything. Most people are waiting for the external world to grant them permission to feel what they already have the power to feel right now. The subconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It doesn't say, "Show me the evidence first." It accepts what you persistently feel is true and begins to orchestrate circumstances to match that inner conviction. When you truly grasp this, you stop begging the universe for things. You stop pleading with God to change your circumstances. Instead, you claim the feeling of the wish fulfilled and let the creative power within you bring it to pass. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is not pretending everything is fine when it's not. This is consciously choosing the state you wish to embody and remaining faithful to it regardless of current appearances. The mystics throughout history understood this secret. They spoke of dwelling in the secret place of the Most High, of abiding in the vine, of remaining steadfast in faith. All of these metaphors point to the same principle. Consciousness is the only reality, and sustained feeling is the creative force. When you feel wealthy in consciousness, the subconscious mind begins to attract opportunities, ideas, people, and circumstances that correspond to that state. You don't need to figure out the how. The infinite intelligence within you knows the way. When you feel loved in consciousness, you radiate a frequency that draws love toward you. People sense it, they respond to it. You become magnetic without effort because you're not seeking from a place of lack. When you feel healthy in consciousness, your body responds. The autonomic nervous system, the immune system, every cell receives the message and begins to align with that dominant feeling. This is not magic. This is the natural law of mind. Just as water freezes at a certain temperature and boils at another, consciousness manifests according to the feeling tone you sustain. The question is not whether this works. The question is, what feeling are you sustaining right now? What state of consciousness are you dwelling in most consistently? Because that, and that alone, is what your subconscious mind is accepting as instruction. That is what your future is being built upon. If you want to change your life, change your consciousness. Not tomorrow, not when conditions improve. Right now, in this very moment, assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Dwell there, return to it again and again until it becomes natural, until it becomes your new normal.